Yeah, hi everyone. Hope you're doing well today. Whatever time it is for you, wherever you are in the world. I know that our regular student in England can't be with us today. She said to apologize. It's very rare for her not to attend, but she has some commitment early in the morning. And like I said, wherever you are in the world, taking part live, or if you look at the video later on YouTube or on Facebook, hello. Hope you're having a good day. Hope you feel well. Feel happy. So let's do the chanting now. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami. Excuse me, a little sneeze. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the 6 paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the 6 paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the 6 paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the 6 paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May they be free from suffering and its causes. May they never be parted from the happiness beyond suffering. May they abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment to the near, and aversion from the far. I shall cause this. Great compassionate Buddha, please inspire me to be able to do so. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every types of offerings, actual and mentally transformed. I confess all of my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in all the virtues of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until cyclic existence ends, and turn the wheel of Dharma for all sentient beings. I dedicate the virtues of myself and others to the great enlightenment. However innumerable all sentient beings are, I vow to save them all. However inexhaustible my delusions are, I vow to extinguish them all. However immeasurable the Dharma teachings are, I vow to master them all. However endless the Buddha's way is, I vow to follow it completely. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Tayata Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisoha. Tayata Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisoha. Tayata Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisoha. Excuse me for the sneeze before. We have some pretty drastic winds down here today. But I thought I'd dealt with that earlier and had the Vicks out, blocked sinuses today. And then all of a sudden I start do the chanting. Maybe it's the vibration and made me sneeze or something like that. Okay, so that is the nature of samsara, unsatisfactoriness. Even sneezing comes under this unsatisfactoriness. So we should do some meditation today. Remember that before we do the meditation, I remind you of what we're talking about. We're sort of addressing questions that came in over a period of about a year, going back to almost a year ago. And I've been utilizing my book, All Is Well. And so these are quotes, Dharma quotes, and quotes of encouragement, you could say as well, that I give explanations for. There's 50 of them in the book. And we're up to just finished 47, so we've still got 48, 49, and 50 to do. And we are kind of covering, first of all, renunciation, of which we've kind of finished that already, really. But renunciation, so the first principle of the path of the Dharma, and we're also covering, or will cover, the Bodhicitta, the great compassion, and also the wisdom of emptiness. Okay, so the wisdom aspect as well. So the three, you could say, three principles of the path, or three principal paths, yeah, within the path. Okay, so, and these are renunciation, turning your mind to the Dharma, directly to the Dharma. Then bodhicitta, like I said, the awakened mind, the altruistic intention, the awakened mind of great compassion to benefit all living beings. And then also the wisdom part as well. Okay, so we're looking at these. At the moment, we're in the middle of having some commentary and contemplation on the 12 links of dependent origination, or Pacciccasamuppada in Pali. And we're kind of utilizing, and for a lot of these teachings in recent times, we're utilizing some articles that I've written over time. And this is a short article that we're utilizing today for this, continuing to, I think this is part 3 of this part of this subject. And we're utilizing as well, when possible, the wisdom tools of hearing. So hearing the Dharma. Of course, if you're reading, it's studying or reading the Dharma. Contemplating the Dharma, so contemplating what it is you've heard or read, and then absorbing your mind with the Dharma, so the wisdom tool of meditation, to absorb your mind with understanding, knowledge, wisdom eventually, okay? And we're utilizing them sometimes when we have time, okay? So in a sense, I do have sort of like an order of teaching these things, but when thoughts come up, but I think I'll teach that right now, then I go off script a little bit, or a lot actually. Okay, so just put up with that, and hopefully you enjoy that as well, because some new things come into my mind. Maybe they're new things for you, or if you've already heard these things, then it's good to reinforce your knowledge, check your knowledge. Okay. Anyway, I say blah, 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 and let's do some meditation. Forget everything I just said, including my sneeze before. So get yourself comfortable. Gently close your eyes, lips gently touching, tongue resting on the upper palate above the top teeth in the mouth. Nice and upright. Unless, of course, it is that you're reclining due to having a bad back or something. That's fine. Any posture is fine as long as your mind remains upright. But if you are sitting upright, whether that's on a chair, like I am today, I'm not on the ground with legs crossed and so forth. If you're in that position on the floor or on a couch or something like that, whether it's the full lotus position, half lotus, or just legs crossed, that's fine. Just keep yourself upright. If you're in that position or on a chair, like I said, keep your body upright. This will help you keep your mind upright. But utmost importance is keeping your mind upright, keeping your mind as bright as possible, calm, peaceful, not giving in to agitation, sort of anxiety or worries, expectations, attachments, and so on. So freeing your mind from all of these things that block our way, you could say, all of these mental states that block our way and block our Dharma path, push us off the Dharma path. Let go of hopes and fears. Let go of the attachment or aversion to the 8 worldly winds. And bring your mind inside your body, and we will initially release the tension from inside the body. Starting from the tips of the toes, and work your way up to your shoulders, then to the tips of your fingers, then to the top of your head. So let's take a few moments to do this now. Mind you, as you think about these areas in your body, release the tension from that area if there's any tension. And if you've finished doing this, now scan your body again and see if there's any leftover tension that you can release. And when you are ready now, bring your attention to the tip of your nose. Obviously, the object of the meditation is the breath, or the breathing process, or the feeling of the breath as you breathe in your nose all the way into your lungs and back out your nose again. And once again, I remind you, you could say there's like 3 major parts of the body that you can focus on as the air passes these parts of the body. Make sure you're focusing on the feeling of the breath. And that is the tip of your nose, then your chest area, then your lungs or abdomen. So breathing in and breathing out. That's all we have to do physically, apart from being here physically, is breathing. All we have to do mentally is focus on the breath. And then, of course, replace your mind on the breath when it wanders. And to remind you again that this is the most important physical thing that we do is breathe. And as we focus on the breath, we improve our concentration. We calm our mind. We brighten our mind. We maintain an upright mind, humble, flexible, stable. The breathing in, breathing out, focusing on the feeling of the breath. You can also add the extra technique of counting the breaths from 1 up to 10. Don't go past 10. Otherwise, there's a little bit of a chance that the counting could become the focus and not the feeling of the breath. And if you get distracted on the way to 10, go back to 1 at that time. So let's practice like this in silence for a little bit. So now we can feel pleased with ourselves for engaging in this short session of breath meditation to improve our concentration. And I will encourage you to, when you do engage in this practice daily, hopefully, in your own time, do it for a bit longer. Due to our time constraints here with the Zoom class, and wanting to give you a good, decent length Dharma talk as well, we have to keep the meditations to a short time or short session. So fill yourself with universal loving kindness as we switch techniques to the metta bhavana or loving kindness meditation. You can utilize the visualization technique of visualizing your whole being filling with the white light or nectar, if you like. Fill yourself with friendship, kindness, appreciation and respect and acceptance and so on. Metta is the word, the Pali word for loving kindness that we normally translate into universal loving kindness, or I do. There are many words we can use because it is actually a multifaceted word as compared to English or translated to English. The word in Sanskrit is Maitri. Fill yourself with so much friendship and loving kindness, utilizing this visualization, visualizing yourself filling with the white light. Fill yourself with so much loving kindness that it now overflows and radiates outwards, initially to your loved ones, family and friends, and filling them with the universal loving kindness as well. So the white light leaves your heart center and enters into the heart centers of your loved ones, filling them with universal loving kindness. Also include strangers now, those beings that you're indifferent towards. Maybe you know them a little, maybe not at all. Extend this loving kindness to them as well. And also those you may regard as enemies. Fill them with the universal loving kindness as well. So all of these people are filled with the white light, representing loving kindness. You having the wish that they are happy and engage in the causes of happiness. That they are free from suffering and free from engaging in the causes of suffering. That they are peaceful. And working their way towards what we call enlightenment, realizing their true enlightened nature. Now let's radiate this loving kindness out beyond human beings alone to include all living beings now. And we can extend this distance-wise, starting around your immediate area, to all of the living beings that live on the land, even under the land, in the waters, fly through the air, whether they're born from wombs, eggs, moisture, or through transformation. All the sentient beings, whether you can see them or not. All sentient beings, whether weak or strong, great or small, short or tall, seen or unseen, near or distant, born or to be born. May they all be happy, free from suffering, and be peaceful. Now extend the loving kindness out throughout your whole state or county. To all of the living beings, whether you have an affinity towards them or are indifferent towards them, which is probably most of them, or whether you have fears of them or are repulsed by them. We are working not only to develop this loving kindness, but really develop a mind of equanimity, free of bias, free of attachment and aversion. This way, our loving kindness becomes immeasurable. It's not bias, not affected by a mind of bias and prejudice. Extend this loving kindness now throughout your whole country to all of the beings. This universal loving kindness, if you're utilizing the visualization technique, now the whole country is covered by this white light, which represents the universal loving kindness. And all of the living beings are filled with the white light. Now throughout the whole world, all of the countries throughout the whole world, and throughout all of the oceans, down to the core of the earth and to the outermost atmosphere. This universal loving kindness that is generated in your own heart now radiates throughout this planet, everywhere, and now beyond the planet, throughout the whole solar system. And all of the solar systems throughout the galaxy. And all of the galaxies throughout the universe. And beyond this universe, till your loving kindness pervades throughout infinite space. Maintaining this meditated mind, this mind of loving kindness, this mind of equanimity. Let's recite the dedication prayer. Due to this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of the Buddha, so that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhicitta, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And may the precious view of Shunyata, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And so, like I mentioned, we're utilizing this short article on interdependent origination, or the 12 links of dependent arising. There's many ways of saying it in English. We've already gone past the first part and had a little bit of commentary on the next paragraph as well. So what I'll do is I'll start on that paragraph. But before that, I won't do the whole little bits in between there, but I'll just recite it to you. The dependent part that causes the suffering, continues our birth in cyclic existence, and then the ceasing part, ceasing the cause of suffering. Dependent on ignorance is karmic formations. Dependent on karmic formations is consciousness. Dependent on consciousness is name and form. Dependent on name and form are the 6 sense bases. Dependent on the 6 sense bases is contact. Dependent on contact is feeling. Dependent on feeling is desire. Dependent on desire is clinging. Dependent on clinging is becoming. Dependent on becoming is birth. Dependent on birth is old age, sickness, death, sorrow, grief, lamentation, pain, despair, and a whole great mass of suffering. But with the ceasing of this ignorance, all karmic formations cease. With the ceasing of karmic formations, consciousness ceases. With the ceasing of consciousness, name and form cease. With the ceasing of name and form, the 6 sense bases cease. With the ceasing of the 6 sense bases, contact ceases. With the ceasing of contact, feeling ceases. And with the ceasing of feeling, desire ceases. With the ceasing of desire, clinging ceases. With the ceasing of clinging, becoming ceases. With the ceasing of becoming, birth ceases. With the ceasing of birth, old age, sickness, death, sorrow, grief, lamentation, pain, despair, and a whole great mass of suffering come to cease. Therefore, with the ceasing of this ignorance, all suffering ceases. Remember, the Buddha said very simply, ignorance is the cause of all evil, of all bad stuff, okay? It's the root cause of suffering. It gives rise to this attachment and aversion. They become what we call the 3 poisons. So the root causes of samsara, ignorance, then attachment and aversion, and then all of the other ones they give rise to, such as pride and doubts and wrong views and so on. And so the ignorance is the root of all evil and the cause of all suffering. But when it is replaced or uprooted by wisdom, one realizes nirvana. These are words of the Buddha, basically. put simply. So, and for the benefit of all, we must share, we must practice the Dharma, and we must share the Dharma. So to develop the true understanding of the Dharma so that you can share it with others through your vibes, through your mind, spirit, through your words, if possible, physical actions as well. Okay, that'll do. Exhortation to practice and share the Dharma. So this is where we resume. We did the first couple of sentences last week towards the end of the class, but here we are. Remember that I've given commentary already the last couple of weeks on all of the 12 links and the ceasing as well. But now this is related to the article, what I wrote in the article. So you can review those other classes if you want those details. There are many forms of dependence mentioned in this analysis. Remember, I must point out here, the purpose of this analysis is to understand the wisdom of emptiness, ultimately, okay? Also develop the compassion and so on, the path to enlightenment. To free ourselves from hopes and fears that I mentioned earlier. It's the same when we contemplate the five skandhas, for instance. The purpose of the analysis is to realize the conditioned existence is impermanent, unsatisfactory, and has no self, and that nirvana is freedom from all this. So there are many forms of dependence mentioned in this analysis. It may be helpful to remember that dependent on or conditions, and this is very important, does not necessarily mean creates. The word create is different to conditions or is dependent on, okay? So many other traditions in the world may use the word create, but it gives you that sort of idea of something creates something. Whereas if something is dependent on something, that is different. If something is, what's the word I used there? Or conditioned by, For instance, we could say that walking is dependent on having legs. So having legs does not create the walking, but walking is dependent on or conditioned by having legs. Hopefully you can understand that. It's quite clear, I think. Or catching an aeroplane is dependent on getting to the airport on time. Now, getting to the airport on time does not create you catching the airplane. But getting to the airport on time, or you're dependent on catching the airplane is dependent on getting to the airport on time. Otherwise, you miss the flight, okay? Or the ability to see something is dependent on your eyes and the lack of obstacles blocking the way, and so on and so forth. So I repeat that line. Your ability to see something physical, is dependent on your eyes, so your ability to see, and the lack of things in the way or obstacles blocking the way. But you can also say your ability to see or the dependent, your eyes, for instance, your ability to see is dependent on your eyes, but it's not created by this dependence on the eyes. Okay, I think you can understand what I mean without me going into too much detail, and so on and so forth. The initial article, by the way, I think I gave about 10 examples and realized it was a little bit too long. So then I shortened it to these 3, which are common. I didn't make them up. I think over the years, maybe I read them somewhere, someone else's commentary or something like that. Maybe in sutras too. Understanding this, the practitioner begins to realize that just as arising dependence need not mean creation, the cessation so valued by the Buddha need not mean annihilation or extinction. In this lifetime, where enlightenment can be realized, we can realize enlightenment here and now. What's blocking the way are our mental afflictions and the fact that we've reinforced them over and over time, okay? So our mental afflictions are what is blocking us realizing our true enlightened nature. Now, this may not depend on what we think is enlightenment too, isn't it? Is it enlightenment of a Buddha? Maybe we need to do a lot of cleaning, and we need to develop the enlightened qualities more and realize the spiritual powers more, obviously, okay? But to realize the enlightenment of Arahant, for instance, or one of the other levels along the way, then all the bhumis or grounds of the Bodhisattva from 1 up to the 10th, we can do this now, or at very least we can practice the Dharma and create the conditions now. So never be disheartened, even if it takes more than 1 day, or it takes more than 1 lifetime, or it takes more than 100,000 lifetimes. That doesn't matter. Time is irrelevant in the path to enlightenment, or on the path to enlightenment. Otherwise, you are engaging in attachment, isn't it? Expectation. So in this lifetime, where enlightenment can be realized, name and form, or mentality and physicality, can cease. That is the 5 skandhas, or 5 aggregates. That is, the identification with physical and mental karmic formations can cease, so that life is no longer lived by the pleasure, pain, fame, shame, praise, blame, or gain-loss principles dictated by the senses. So at the moment, we are kind of, you could say, controlled by either our attachment or aversion to these 8 worldly winds or 8 worldly concerns. Generally, even though we can apply this in the vice versa, but generally we are attached to pleasure. We have an aversion to pain. We're attached to fame, have an aversion to shame. Attached to praise, have an aversion to blame. Attached to gain, and have an aversion to loss. Generally, okay? So like I said, you can apply this the vice versa way as well. So in this lifetime, we can have this cease. So we can uproot ignorance. When we uproot the ignorance, it doesn't give rise to karmic formation. So we don't create the karma because we have freed ourselves from the ignorance. From the karmic formations arises consciousness. So we have freed ourselves in that case from that. And then, of course, from this consciousness into the next life, this gives rise to name and form, or to the 6, or the 5 aggregates, I should say, which then give rise, of course, to the 6 senses and so on. And then the cycle continues. But we can free ourselves. So don't be disheartened on the path, and have encouragement, encourage yourself constantly. Have enthusiasm, for the practice. See the good in the practice. I think we have maybe about 4 minutes left. So I will continue onwards, okay? I was going to give a bit more commentary on that, but I think that's enough for the moment. So in this way, one could understand the sequence of the 12 links in a more simpler and fluid way. For example, to the extent which the mind has not comprehended the truth, so that's ignorance, habitual drives and tendencies manifest and condition awareness into a discriminative mode of consciousness that operates in terms of subject and object, or mentality and physicality. So that covers the 4 I just mentioned. So ignorance, depending on ignorance, karmic formation, depending on karmic formation, is consciousness, depending on consciousness is name and form. I'll repeat that then. In this way, one could understand the sequence in a more simpler and fluid way. For example, to the extent to which the mind has not comprehending the truth, habitual drives and tendencies manifest. So that means that from this ignorance, then the karmic formations arise. And condition awareness into a discriminative mode of consciousness. So the consciousness arises, and that operates in terms of subject and object, and then creates, again, the form and the name, or the 5 aggregates. The Pali word namarupa is name and form, okay? It's kind of like a nickname, you could say, for the 5 aggregates, or the 5 skandhas. our physicality and our mentality. So this consciousness that operates in terms of subject and object, held to exist on either side of the 6 sense doors. These sense doors open dependent on contact that can arouse varying degrees of sensation or feeling. Feeling stimulates desire, and according to the power of desire, attention lingers and clings. So personal aims and obsessions develop to give rise to self-consciousness. That self-consciousness, once arisen, must follow the cycle of maturing and passing away, resulting in a sense of suffering and sadness that varies from sorrow to grief to depression to anguish and emotional breakdown. Okay, so I know that we're just about to finish, so I will say I rejoice in your goodness as always, okay? And look after yourselves, especially mentally. Practice the Dharma to the best of your ability. Not too tight, not too loose. And we'll continue this analysis or this discussion in the coming weeks, in the next 2 weeks, I'd say, before we move on to the next subject. Okie dokie. And we will do the 3 wisdom tool practice next week for sure, and the week after. It's very funny. So often I get cut off. This time, the opposite. But no worries. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. These mudras that I just did represent wisdom and compassion and a balance and unification of the two. So this one, compassion, and also a balance of the elements. They come with mantras as well. Om Ram Om Siddham Om Anepeme Hom Om Sale Sulisande Swaha Prum. And this one is representative of a wisdom, and it's known as the heart-to-heart mudra. Om Bara Bara Sambara Sambara